Sir. Now I am pursuing MA English in Ambedkar University, sir. I am from Mahabubabad.
Okay. Dear students, welcome to the second online session. This course is called as Survey of British Literature. So, yesterday we were talking about the Renaissance in the context of England, and before that we talked about Renaissance in the context of Europe. Now today,
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, your mic is close to your mouth. Your close to your mouth, sir. Your voice is not clearly.
1 second.
Your room resounds, sir. I hear that.
Okay, you mean to say that there is echo in the room. That's what you are saying, huh?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Okay. 1 second. Ashu, please mute yourself, otherwise I'm forced to mute you. Don't call that disturbance in the class. Otherwise, you'll be thrown out also. Okay, all right. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir. Please continue.
Okay, fine, all right, thank you. I was talking to you that we were, in fact, we talked about Renaissance in the context of England yesterday. And today we're going to talk about, now we were talking about Shakespeare, the great Shakespeare and his age called Elizabethan age. So in this lecture today, in this class today, we are going to talk about the Elizabethan age. In fact, we started, talking about Shakespeare yesterday, and we left it halfway. Today, I'm going to further talk about the age of Shakespeare or the Elizabethan age. Why the Elizabethan age? This age is named after the Queen Elizabeth, who ruled in England in 16th century. Again, that noise, who is that? Ashu, I have already muted yourself. You have to mute yourself. Munazza, Tapasu, mute yourself. Which language do you understand? I don't understand. Varolti Rajani, yes, mute yourself. Otherwise, I will throw you out simply.
Yeah, Jyoti also unmute.
Everybody mute yourself. That is how the class can go on smoothly. Otherwise, not possible. If you create noise in the background, how can the class be conducted smoothly? That is simply not possible. So please mute yourself.
Yeah, Jyoti. Not unmute.
Sir, please mute the people who are
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah, and continue with
there
the
are a
class.
lot of people.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I will continue the class. So I was talking to you that the age of Elizabeth, in this lecture, in this class today, we are going to talk about the age of Elizabeth or the Elizabethan age. Now, Elizabeth was the name of a queen who ruled in England in 16th century. So we were talking about drama. Drama started in the Elizabethan age, in the age of Renaissance, which had started in Italy, in Germany. Then it reached Germany. And finally it reached in England. And when we talk about the poetry, there was a lot of poetry written in England in the age of Elizabeth. Renaissance poetry, for example, we talk about, and there were so many writers who wrote down poetry. For example, you had, in the context of, sonneteering or sonnet writing, there are so many people, Sidney, Earl of Surrey, all these people, and then came Sidney Spencer, Edmund Spencer later on. One second.
Admin request to mute all the mics, sir, please.
Sir, as a host, you can mute them all. Please continue by muting them all.
Juvelia, please mute yourself.
Vajroji Rajini, please mute yourself. Vajroji Rajini.
Sir, please mute everybody from your end.
Fine. Okay, that's all right. Now, I was talking to you about drama. I said that a lot of poetry was written in the age of Renaissance, in the age of Shakespeare, the Elizabethan age, and now drama. When we talk about drama, there were many people, many writers who wrote dramas, who wrote plays, and it was like the climax. We can say a sort of climax of Elizabethan drama, of Renaissance drama, we can say. And when we talk about Renaissance and we define Renaissance, we have in fact defined it in the earlier classes also. Renaissance stands for revival. Renaissance stands for regeneration. It stands for regeneration of what? Of the ancient learning. Ancient learning here means Greek learning. Because all these people like Aristotle and Plato was followed, and it was revival of regeneration of Greek learning and pre-Christian thought. That of course of Greek literature, Roman literature, which is known as classical literature. Now we had a great writing. We had in the age of Renaissance, in the age of, we had somebody called as Thomas More, who came up with that great book called, he wrote down an writing called Utopia. So what happened in the Renaissance movement, it in fact started, it rejuvenated, we can say, originated in Italy, and the main writers, the great writers of the movement was Plutarch. Plutarch was one of the great writers. Copernicus, those people who contributed to the age of Renaissance. And we had somebody called as Zeno. Now, among the dramatists, Shakespeare is the culmination, we can say, in England, in the context of England. The culmination, the flowering, we can say, that took place in England when we talk about Renaissance. The culmination, the philosophies, the thought process, we can say, the culmination, the flowering of literature, it took place in England in the age of Elizabeth, that is Shakespearean age. And what was, the Elizabethan age was about? It celebrated life as it is. Okay, it is called the second glorious age in the history of English literature. It actually, what was one of the characteristics, what was one of the great things about this age was that it celebrated life. It was celebratory in nature. Okay, celebratory in nature. It depicted life as it is. Okay, so it depicted life in reality. So there were a large number of characters, we can say, when we talk about the Elizabethan drama. So basically talking about Elizabethan drama, and there were a lot of characters, all sort of characters, as already discussed, as I was talking to you earlier also. In fact, in the previous class also, I said that there are a number of characters which have been dealt with. So you will find a lot of characters, all sorts of characters. When we say all sorts of characters, for example, we mean to say that characters, there are different characters, all sorts of characters, all types of characters, which are like princes. The writer, the dramatist talks about the princes, the kings, and there was this labor class also, the lower street of society also. So Elizabethan, that is why Elizabethan drama, Shakespearean drama is, is the greatest drama, considered as a, the greatest plays ever written. So it actually was the replica, we can say, of the real world. It depicted the dramas, the plays in Elizabethan age depicted the real world. So when we talk about, when we make a comparison between medieval drama, for example, talk about Shea, this Geoffrey Chaucer, who is regarded as the, who belongs to medieval age. So all at that particular time, in his time, different types of dramas were written, which were called as morality plays, mystery plays. They were based on, religious themes. They talked about religious figures. They talked about spiritual figures. They talked about saints. All these people, religious people, saints, priests, etc. So, in the context of England, also, when we talk about comedy in England, there are, several figures, several prominent writers or dramatists who are known for writing comedy. All these people, all these this group called university wits, for example, we had somebody called as uh, George P. Holmes, George Green, who had Lily. They were basically the beginners of English comedy, and their comedies, we can say, their comedies paled when it comes to Shakespeare, because Shakespeare was somebody, a dramatist, who outclassed them. Okay, so Shakespeare, we can say Shakespeare on one side, and all the dramatists, all the playwrights on the other side. Because when we talk about Shakespeare in comparison to other dramatists, or in comparison to university wits, for example, Christopher Marlowe also was one of the university wits. In fact, he was the greatest of them all. Okay, so university wits were a group of dramatists who contributed a lot to literature at that particular time. They were university educated people. For example, take the case of Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe. He came from the University of Cambridge, and other people like Lilly, Thomas Green, Thomas Nash, all these people were the products of the university, and they were very particular about following the rules. So they were very bookish. They were, we can say, they were rule bound. But Shakespeare didn't follow any rules, since he was not educated. He was just a school graduate, you can say. He had done his schooling only. So he, in fact, his that was an advantage when it comes to Shakespeare. So when we say that, if somebody is educated, but it doesn't mean that he kind of will be the great person. I mean, in fact, education, yeah, of course, it polishes you. But in the context of Shakespeare, in the case of Shakespeare, Shakespeare was somebody who, it was an added advantage. Not being educated, not being a university or a college graduate, because he had, he did not follow any rules, and that was a kind of added advantage to him. And that's why Shakespeare on one side, and all the other dramatists on the other side. And let me talk about why Elizabethan drama, why Shakespearean drama was considered the greatest. Because all these playwrights, they talked about, they were kind of elitist, we can say. They talked about elite class of the society. But Shakespeare was somebody, as a dramatist, he talked about all these people, princes, kings, queens, in his drama, in his comedies, tragedies. But he, at the same time, he talked about the domestic subjects also. For example, one of his plays is called as, titled as taming of the ship, where he talks about handling a difficult woman. So it is completely a domestic subject, and one of his plays is Midsummer Night's Dream, where Bottom is one of the characters, one of the comic characters, and Shakespeare. So for Shakespearean dramas, one of the important dramas he wrote down, which is known as a history play, historical play. It is called as Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford, there was this character called Sir John Falstaff, who was a companion to the prince, and he was a comical character. In fact, he is the most comical character ever produced in all the plays which has been produced, which have been written so far in all the languages. He is considered as the most comical character, and this character fascinated Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth herself went to the theaters, and she saw this drama, she saw this play called Henry Ford, and she was so fascinated, she was so impressed, she was so influenced, we can say, and she kind of requested, she ordered Shakespeare rather to write down a play, to come up with a play where Sir John Falstaff will be the central character, the main character, the protagonist. And Shakespeare did that. He obeyed the Queen's order, and he came out with a play called Merry Lives of Windsor. Now, Merry Wives of Windsor was a play written by Shakespeare, where Sir John Falstaff was the central character, or the hero, was the protagonist, we can say. And again, we have a play, a romantic comedy. Now, when we talk about the classification of Shakespearean plays or Shakespearean drama, they are normally divided into comedies and tragedies. Now, comedy is and tragedies, that is the rough classification, but there are other that those are the, you can say, the main genres when it comes, main types of drama Shakespeare has produced. But there, at the same time, we know about other plays also. For example, you had history plays, you had romances, few romances were studied, and you had history plays, romances, comedies and tragedies. Comedy and tragedy, and there are plays, for example, as you like it, which is considered as a romantic comedy. Basically, comedy, tragedy, and history plays. In fact, history, there were some were kind of tragic in nature. But Shakespeare, when we talk about Shakespeare, he has written about 40 dramas, 39 dramas, 36 plays of his own, and a couple of plays he wrote down in collaboration with other people. And I was talking to you about this romantic comedy called As You Like It, where Rosalind is the main character, the leading character, and the other is Merchant of Winds. So in these both these plays, women are the leading characters. Shakespeare has given a lot of space to women. When we talk about comedies, in every Shakespearean comedy, you will find a woman character, you will find a female character who is a protagonist, who is the main character. And when we talk about tragedies, he has 50% of his plays, half of his plays he has produced are tragedies actually. So when we talk about his tragedies, we normally often talk about, you will often find people talking about those four tragedies like Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, and King Lear. But there are other tragedies also at the same time, other tragedies he has written down, he has produced, but these are the famous ones. Shakespearean comedy, when we talk about Shakespearean comedy, are life-oriented. as I already told you that what was special about the Elizabethan drama, what was special about what was special about the Elizabethan drama, Shakespearean drama, they were life like, they depicted life as it is. So they depicted real life situations, real life things. Okay, so university kids, when we talk about they had to follow rules, they were bookish, we can say. They were rule bound, but Shakespeare, thought out of box. He was somebody who thought out of box, who had no rules to follow because he was not an educated. It was, for them, it was like a force, we can say. They were forced to follow the rules. But when it comes to Shakespeare, he kind of gave it a shift. That's why he is different from others. The greatest dramatist, the greatest playwright ever. And the other drama, the other play by Shakespeare is called as Tempest, the Tempest. And the other is the Winter's Tale. Now, when we talk about these plays, both these plays, the Tempest and the Winter's Tale, they are they are they are called as, excuse me, romances. Okay, they are called as romances. I had to take a pic also. Please remind me of that later. Yeah. Okay, so the Tempest is one of the plays. Tempest and the Winter's Tale are again the plays by Shakespeare, which are called as romances. Okay, because Shakespeare, when we talk about Shakespeare, he took more liberty. He made impossible possible. He made unfamiliar familiar. And that is also the difference between comedy and romance. Romance is something which is where you make impossible possible, and where you make unfamiliar familiar. Okay, and basically the Elizabethan tragedy, they talk about, since the word tragedy, when we talk about tragedy, when we say tragedy, it deals with serious events of life. Okay, it talks about the sufferings, it talks about the stories from life which make us feel pain, which make us cry, which make us weep, etc. So he talks about pain. When we talk about Shakespearean comedy or a tragedy, or any tragedy for that matter, he talks about the sufferings of people. He talks about the pain of people. So since life is the mixture of both bright and dark, so comedy basically, we can say, deals with the brighter side of life, and tragedy on the other hand deals with the darker side of the life. So basically, when we talk about Shakespearean plays, there are comedies and there are tragedies. The others are like history plays, romances. They are the subspecies, subgenres of plays, of Shakespearean plays. University with, when we talk about them, they were so the greatest of them, as I already told you that he was known as, he was called as this doctor, this Christopher Marlowe. Now Christopher Marlowe comes up with a play, his greatest play. He has so many plays. The Dumberly is also one of his plays. There are other plays to his credit as well, but Dr. Faustus is the greatest play he has produced. It is also in your syllabus, and in that particular drama, he talks about the study of necromancy. He talks about the black magic, and Shakespearean tragedies. When we talk about Shakespearean tragedies, there's a famous book with a name called Shakespearean Tragedies by A.C. Bradley. Now, A.C. Bradley is a famous Shakespearean critic who talks about all these famous tragedies like Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. All these famous tragedies. But at the same time, I talked to you about the Shakespearean comedies. There are four Shakespearean comedies. There are four greatest Shakespearean comedies. In fact, there are others also which are very famous, which are not, we can say, less tragic, but they are not very often talked about. For example, Julius Caesar is also one of the one of the tragic plays or tragedies by Shakespeare, and Antony and Cleopatra is also one of the famous tragedies by Shakespeare, and Coriolanus is also one of the greatest tragedies ever produced. So they are actually 7 in number, but we often talk about, for example, if you talk about this critic called A.C. Bradley, who is a famous Shakespearean critic, he talks about only 4 tragedies. Okay, that is Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Now, what is great about Shakespeare? In fact, we have been talking about his plays, his tragedies, whether his comedies and tragedies, they are lifelike. They are not bookish in nature. They are not priestly or saintly. They depict life as it is. And Hamlet, talking about these famous tragedies, Hamlet, when we talk about Hamlet, Hamlet is considered as the greatest of all. You will find so many adaptations of Hamlet in Bollywood. So many movies have been, different, like Hamlet has been depicted or portrayed differently in different cinema. And it is the greatest of all the tragedies. And Claudius happens to be one of the characters who is a character in that particular play. And the feelings and thoughts it generates become common to all. So that is what commonality Shakespearean play. That's what Shakespearean play is all about. And I told you earlier that he was the greatest dramatist ever, not merely in English, not only in English language, English literature, but he is considered as the greatest, dramatist ever, who lived ever. So, and also talking about him, we should also talk about some narrative poems written by him. As earlier, in fact, I talked about it earlier in the previous class also. I throw some light on it. The Brave of Lucrece and Venus and Adonis, or some of the poems, some of the narrative or long poems written by Shakespeare, which followed the Ovidian style. Ovidian style was a model for Renaissance poets. Actually, they copied it primarily in these plays. Ovidian style was followed, we can say. So they actually copied him predominantly. Shakespeare predominantly, he was a dramatist, and he has so much poetry to his credit. For example, to talk about his sonnets, he has 154 sonnets to his credit. But talking about plays, there is this classification, the comedy. He has written comedy, tragedy, histories, and romances. And he wrote popular comedy, not elitist comedy. Now, in fact, I spoke about it. In fact, when we make a comparison between Shakespeare and other dramatists who came before him, they wrote very elitist comedy. They talked about the elite class, the higher ups, the high class, the creamy layer of the society. But when it comes to Shakespeare, in terms of characters, in terms of characterization, he talks about all the people, the lowest grade of society. He talked about the labor class of the society. So, elitist comedy, there is something called an elitist comedy, and and popular comedy. Now, Shakespeare was known for writing popular comedy, and these people called university wits, which was, a group of university
The name of the,
educated people.
excuse me, sir. Name of the popular comedy is High Class.
No, I didn't get me. I said that Shakespeare is known for writing popular comedy. Popular comedy means that comedy which does not deal with the elite class of the society, which does not talk about the creamy layer of the society. In fact, he also talked about creamy layer of the society. He talked about, for example, King Lear, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, Henry VII, Henry VIII. All these plays are written by Shakespeare, but at the same time, he did not ignore the other class of the society, the lower strata of the society. But we can say that he wrote popular comedy, and he did not focus on elitist comedy. Now, all these people, this group of dramatists who were known as university wits, they were known for writing elitist comedy. Now, what is elitist comedy? Elitist comedy is a comedy which only deals with the elite class of the society. That is, they talked about kings, they talked about knights, they talked about princes in their plays. But Shakespeare didn't do that. That's why he's greater. He's the greatest. Shakespeare is known for writing popular comedy. Popular comedy means which talked about the lower class of the society, which talked about the labor class, which talked about the common people, the working class of the society. And it was, we can say, inclusive in nature, his characterization, his characters, it was inclusive in nature. So that is why Shakespeare is the greatest of them all. Okay, so in 1623, first folio of the works was published. When there is some other figure, the dramatist called Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was somebody who is actually called the father of neoclassical. This is a neoclassical period, neoclassical poetry, which came later. But he, at the same time, he has been a contemporary of Shakespeare. He was a friend. In fact, he came up with a poem also where he praised Shakespeare. I think the title of the poem is On Shakespeare, where he talked highly about Shakespeare. He, lavished a lot of praise on Shakespeare, on the greatness of Shakespeare, and he compares Shakespeare to other. He says that.
Sorry, sir. He said, On Shakespeare is a great tribute to a greater poet.
Yes, one of the poems is On Shakespeare. He says that, oh, my Shakespeare, I will not compare you with the other dramatists. You are the greatest of them all. The poem starts with the opening line of the poem is, I'm not sure about opening line, but the poem is, please check yourself. The poem is called as On Shakespeare, where he lavishes a lot of praise on the greatness of Shakespeare. But he is also known as, he has passed the comment, he says that Shakespeare knew little Latin and less deep. It was a kind of, it is taken as both a compliment and it was taken as a derogatory comment, we can say. It was taken as there was a lot of derogation which was seen in this comment. Because he said that because at that point of time when Shakespeare was writing, Latin and these languages, Latin and Greek, they were prestigious. English was not prestigious at that particular time, because I have already talked about it in the offline classes. English was all these people, for example, when you talk about top, English was just at the formative stage, and it was Shakespeare, the great Shakespeare, who added many thousands of words. In fact, at that particular time, English dictionary had only 6,000 words, and it was Shakespeare who added 8,000 more words to English dictionary. 8,000 more words to English dictionary. And do, he created, he recreated, he recoined, and he produced a new vocabulary. He provided a new vocabulary to the English language, and that's what is the contribution. And when we talk about the number of words he has used in his plays, in his poetry, they are 40,000 in number. So at that point of time, in all the plays, in all his writings, he has used 40,000 at the when he wrote down his plays. So there's a comment by Ben Jonson. Now Ben Jonson, I told you that he was a contemporary of Shakespeare. He was a contemporary of Shakespeare. He said that Shakespeare knew little Latin and less Greek, but that was taken as a derogatory comment. He played Shakespeare. So people say that it was a compliment. It was taken otherwise also. And dramatic, John Dryden, who belonged to the later age called neoclassical age, the age of 17th century. He came up with a comment. He said that he was the dramatist. He was the greatest dramatist of all times. That is a compliment from John Dryden. John Dryden belonged to the 17th century poet. Now, English at that particular time, as I already told you, that English language was just in the formative stage. It had limited vocabulary. Shakespeare enriched it. He created, recreated, coined or recoined these words, new words, and that is the comedies. The contribution of Shakespeare. And his comedies, talking further about his comedies, they are considered as, they are known as loose in terms of plot. Because Shakespeare, he's carried by scenes. Ben Jonson says. Ben Jonson once again makes a comment. He says that he's carried by scenes. He wrote Taming of the Shrew. We in fact talked about it. He wrote Love, Labour's Lost. These are the different comedies. Shakespearean comedy is also intense in nature. For example, The Merchant of Venice, Much Ado About Nothing is also a Shakespearean comedy. As You Like It is a romantic comedy. These are the comedies. The basic models I told you, the basic dramatic models are only two, that is comedy and tragedy. Now these are the species, we can say. And historical plays like King John, Henry IV, 5, 6, 7, 8, all these are history plays. Richard II, Richard IV, The Pericles, The Winter's Tale, Two Gentlemen of Verona. These are all history plays. The other the comedies are like Measure for Measure. It's also a comedy. In a comedy, what happens? Comedy has to end with a resolution. There is always a happy ending when we talk about comedy. Tensions or conflicts are to be resolved in comedy. And Shakespeare, being the greatest, them all, he was not. You should remember that he was not, the greatest in English language was because greatest in all the languages. All the major languages is going on. Shakespeare is staged in all the languages. And he was not merely successful in English, on English stage or English language. He was equally successful, we can say, in all the languages of the world. Now Shakespeare also used moderation. He didn't go from the real world. That's what we have been talking about. And he had characters, variety of characters in his plays, tragic characters, central characters. For example, maybe he's of Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, his famous tragedies, Macbeth. In tragedy, hero is not, and what happens, what is the important thing about tragedy? In tragedy, hero is not the only important character, but villain, the negative character, is also important. And that is what is a tragedy? Somebody is asking, what is a tragedy? Tragedy is a play where a writer talks about the sufferings of people, where the dramatist or the playwright or the writer talks about the pain of people, where he talks about all these things which make us weep, which make us feel pain. So tragedy, what happens, and there is something called as tragic love. For example, if we talk about King Lear, King Lear is somebody, is a character who suffers from a flaw called flattery. Now he loves to be flattered. He loves to be praised by people, and when he asks his daughters to, how much, when he asks his daughters how much they love him, he comes up, they come up with a reply, and he expects them to exaggerate things, to lavish praise on him. And later on, this tragic flaw, now tragic flaw is a small mistake, flaw, committed by the central character, but it becomes, it kind of creates a storm in his life, internal and external, both internal storm and external storm. Okay, now tragedy deals with
Excuse me.
sufferings of life. Yeah, please.
King Lear is King Lear is the character is there, no? That is a
Yes.
real story or written by the Shakespeare?
Yeah, Shakespeare, one minute. That may be real, that may be unreal, but the thing is, when a writer writes, he always, he might have observed that those different characters in his real life also. It may be realistic, it may be unrealistic, it may be the products of his imagination, because he observes. Writer is not an ordinary person, a dramatist is not an ordinary person. He observes it, and what is great about the great literature is that it kind of invokes you. It you feel, you relate to it, you identify. When you, for example, when you talk about this play called King Lear, when you go through this play called King Lear, when you study it, you start identifying with a character, because what was the tragic flaw? For example, I talked about tragic flaw in the context of England, in the context of King Lear. He suffers from that flaw. He suffers from that flaw called this flattery. It's a tragic flaw which is responsible for the storm in his life. Later on he gets mad because he is left by his daughters, and he kind of, the daughter Cordelia, the youngest daughter of this King Lear, he kind of banishes him from the property, because he thought that she will come up with a lot of praise for him.
In the
But
end of the story,
in the end of the story, King Lear gets mad because
it was the
nobody,
character of the Cordelia.
he gets mad and he's adopted by Cordelia. So what happens in great literature? In great literature, there are universal things. You kind of relate yourself. You find things which are very identical, to which you can relate to. You identify yourself. The situations, the events which happen in place. That is what is there, and it may be real, it may be unreal. But the thing is, when you identify yourself, that is the greatest quality of great literary piece. And talking about tragedy, I was talking to you about tragedy.
Sir, one more dot.
Okay, 1 second. You can pose the questions at the end. Let me finish the lecture.
This is the last
Okay.
one. Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth are they, no? They are the characters or the writer's name?
No, they are the name. They are the name of the plays, and they are the characters also. Like, for example, you have Hamlet. There is a elder Hamlet, father. The son of the Hamlet is also called as Hamlet. King Lear is the name of a character also, and it's the name of the play also. Okay, Othello, Macbeth, all Othello, King Lear, they are the names of the characters and the plays also. Okay. So tragedy, what happens? Hero is not merely important. Hero is not only the important character, but it is the villain also. Okay, so engineering of villain, we can say, happens in the case of tragedies. In the case of Shakespearean tragedies, for example, Edmund in Hamlet, is the villain. Edmund King here, who is the villain, who is the bastard son of Gloucester. Now, Gloucester was somebody who was very close to, who was next to the king, his, we can say, advisor, and Edgar is another character in the play. So, what is the job of the villains? Villains, they destroy the good. Their job is to destroy the good, and in the process, they destroy themselves. They are symbolic for destruction. They try to create destruction, but in the process they get destroyed. And talking about all these plays, for example, King Lear, there are a lot of movies have been made made on the different Shakespearean tragedies, especially. For example, the other day also, so there are a lot of adaptations. Adaptation is something when a movie is based on a writing, a drama, and a novel. For example, you have Hindi film industry. This particular director called Vishal Bharadwaj, who is known for making films based on Shakespearean tragedies. For example, he came up with a drama. He came up with a movie called Haidar. Haidar is basically based on a Shakespearean play called Hamlet, and he came up with another movie called Makbul, which is based on Macbeth. And Othello also. Othello, there's a movie on Othello. Not only in the film, Hindi film industry, it has been Shakespeare has been staged in English, in French, Spanish, Portuguese, in all the major languages. That's why he is the greatest dramatist ever. He is considered as the greatest dramatist because he has been translated, he has been staged in all the major languages of the world, not merely in English. He is not the greatest dramatist of English literature only. He is the greatest dramatist of all times, all the literatures, all the languages, and he has been staged. And so many actors have, made their career. They can say they were successful because they, staged Shakespeare. They played Shakespeare. I'm reminded of a Bollywood actor called Syed Jaffri. If you know him, I don't know how many of you. He's a very good actor, and he is the first Indian. He's an Indian actor basically, who has staged Shakespeare. Who is the first person, in fact, who has staged Shakespeare, who has acted Shakespeare in the in foreign countries, in European countries. So Shakespeare, when we talk about in the context of Shakespeare, he is lot of plays have been, many of his plays have been adapted, appropriated, translated, reappropriated, because you find universal themes in Shakespearean plays, and that is what makes him, great. I think it's enough for the day. If you have any questions, so we can utilize another 5 minutes of the class. Anything you want to ask or any observation, you're most welcome. Please do that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Sir, 4 units are completed, no?
Yes.
4 units are completed, no?
Yeah, you can say that. 4 units. What are the 4 units like? I mean, this is
King Lear.
Yeah, King Lear, yeah. In fact, I'm talking about it in the general way. And giving you the
Sonnet. Shakespeare's sonnets.
yeah, yes. Tell us your name and page number starting that. Okay, fine.
43, sir. 43.
Yes, well, in fact, we talked about King Lear, not in detail. I gave some introduction to it, and sonnets also. Shakespeare of friendship and of studies. Those that is, those are the essays by Francis Bacon. So, in fact, when I talked about it, we are here actually. So we can say that unit 5, 4, 5 we are talking about. Sharma ji, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good.
Yeah,
Good, sir.
could you take a pic? There's some issue with my laptop. Could you take a pic and forward it to me?
Sure, sir. Please do.
Please take a pic of the Zoom class and forward it to me. WhatsApp. Okay. Fine.
Please.
Yes. I want to continue for another 2 minutes. If you want to pose a question, if you have a query, or if you want to ask anything, please do that. Otherwise,
No,
we will wrap
if
up
you
the
are
class.
getting, hello, sir. If you are
Yes.
getting any question in the examination, then write with our own note.
What question you are talking about?
Whatever about the regarding to the question, we can write with our own sentence, no?
Yeah, you should. That is always better. That is always considered as better. You go through your text, your study material, and write down in your own language. That's always preferable, we can say. All right, now.
Yes, sir.
We need to write the characters also, sir. We need to explain the characters or anything else.
Of course, you have to. It depends on the question, as I already told you. Demand. The question, the demand of the question. It depends on the question. Now, how question is framed, you have to answer accordingly. Right.
Sir, and assignments, what about
What will be the pattern of the exam? Please look at the question paper given at the back of your textbook. The last page of your textbook, question paper has already been provided there. Please go through it. Assignments, I'm not provide. I don't know about it. I cannot talk about it. It seems
Okay, sir.
only I've heard that you're supposed to scan it, you're supposed to upload it yourself on university website. And then they will come up with the topics. Sarma, did you take a pic?
Yes, sir. I sent it to you too.
Okay, fine. Thank you. All right. Okay, any other thing?
Sir, can you
Thank you.
explain important units again, sir? Because
have
some
already-
students ticks are others, some students are others tick.
Okay,
That's why.
I will do it in the next class. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yesterday they were already posted in the group.
I have done it.
Yes, sir. Yesterday was
You can
told, but
just go-
some students tick other
What
units.
happens? No, what happens is normally in these classes, one group will be on one Sunday,
Shall we leave?
another group will be on another Sunday. So what I will discuss, they might have written down, they might have jotted it down, they might have noted it down. It is better you ask other people, your friends. Okay, and if not, remind me about it in the next class. I will do it.
No, sir, it's already posted in the group. If the lady is in
Yes,
the group, she can see it.
Now we have one. It is a 1 hour class. Just because we started late, so I'm continuing. Otherwise, it's a 1 hour class. I have already done it in the previous class. You can talk to you. Sharma ji, if you have those, if you have jotted down, noted down, please forward it to her. You can contact us.
Yesterday I have noted down, sir, and somebody else
you
has
can-
posted the same. in the group also. That can be perused by
No,
this.
it is not. It is better not to post it in the group. It is better not to post in the group. We can forward individually. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Fine.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So you're trying to post something in your WhatsApp group, so we're not in that group. How can we get that, sir?
A WhatsApp group. I am not a part of the WhatsApp group, so I
Okay.
Oh, so just please
Okay.
provide us also. So we're missing something, no? We're also students.
Okay, that's okay. You just post your phone number in the group in this chat also.
Yeah, actually, we are in that
Samantha
2022.
will take care of.
Yeah, after the
Just
class.
please post your numbers. Just I'll add you in the group.
Yeah, ma'am. We are already in 2022 PG group is out there, no? So we are in that.
Yes,
So I don't know other groups which
Let
are
us be
included.
brief,
Yeah,
brief
that's
in
the
the
group.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It will be
that's the
very
group.
brief in the discussion.
Yeah.
okay, so we'll share it.
Sharma ji can do that. He has my number. He can add me to the group. Okay.
Sir.
You can do that, Sharma ji. Okay.
Yes.
Any other thing you want to ask? Okay. Shall I take a leave?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
The question paper is showing 70 marks and remaining will be the assignments.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
70 and 30. Yeah. Okay, fine, guys. Thank you, dear students. Thank you for joining the session. Let me take a leave here. The other counselor may be waiting. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank
See you
you,
in the
sir.
next class. See you in the next online class. Till then,
Thank you.
take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.